Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Gingiss welcoming you to another episode of The Experience Maker, our final one for 2020, in fact. So happy that you're here. I am a speaker, author, a podcaster, and coach, and I love nothing more than meeting other people who have become experience makers in their own business or who teach others to do the same. And today I'm very, very happy to welcome the founder and CEO of 247.ai and also the author of this new book, The Age of Intent, Using Artificial Intelligence to Deliver a Superior Customer Experience. Mr. P.V. Kannan, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Well, I've been looking forward to talking with you, and I even teased this on last week's show that, you know, as AI has become more and more prevalent, I don't honestly know how I feel about it. And sometimes I'm really excited about it, and sometimes I'm scared to death of it. So I want you to, first of all, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and 247.ai, and then we're going to dig right into artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. So 247.ai helps major brands automate customer service conversations and sales conversations. And the big push behind this is, as you know, companies struggle with volumes of contacts that they get, and either they are overstaffed or perennially understaffed. And with COVID, this year has been a disaster for most major brands, right? But what the power of AI in customer service is, it allows you to take every contact that comes in and, to the extent possible, try and automate it. And what is amazing about it is that's what consumers of today want, right? They really don't want to hang around waiting for an agent. They really want to interact with a smart system that understands them really well and resolves whatever they were looking for.
Yeah, it's interesting, and you actually took the question out of my mouth, because I was going to ask you, the subtitle of your book is Using Artificial Intelligence to Deliver a Superior Customer Experience. So I want to get into this idea of this is not about necessarily saving money, getting rid of the humans. It's actually about improving the experience. Tell me, or give me some examples of how that happens.
It's a really good question. And that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of automation efforts fail. A lot of the automation efforts look like it's being pushed on the customer, right? And as consumers, we naturally resist it, right? We don't like anything pushed on us. So where it really works is where the consumer is eager to engage with AI and get something done. So, and the reason I wrote the book is, unfortunately, the tools are out there from many companies, and most of the implementations are really, quite pathetic, right? So I wanted to share, what 247.ai has done for many of its customers, and kind of, put a framework and a methodology so that people do it with care and caution, right? Like you said, it's really not about removing all the agents. It's really about making it available 24/7, where I can do something and have the satisfaction it got done in a couple of minutes and I'm done, right? And, customers have been trained in the last 20 years to do pretty much self-service. And most interactions are today self-service, right? In the past, you would call up bank and find out what your balance is. No one does that, right? And so what for this era, what you need is something that's smart and intelligent. And if it cannot handle the inquiry, quickly move it to a human agent. But for the experience sake, make sure that the agent is quickly brought up to speed, right? So in the book, I talk about the necessary first step is to summarize the conversation. So the agent quickly says, "Oh, Dan is on the site. He's looking for the new Apple headphones, and he wants to understand what formats does it support, right?" And the bot couldn't help it, but the agent can step in and say, "Dan, I see you're trying to buy the Apple headphones. Let me help you with you. Let me help with that," right? But unfortunately, most of the implementations are kind of completely botched up. So you either have the bot hanging in there with no escalation to a human agent, or the agent comes and you've spent 10 minutes with the bot and starts asking all those questions again.
It's funny you say that, because there's actually the same problems that we've had on the telephone for 40 years, right? Is we don't like repeating ourselves to multiple agents, and we get stuck in what I like to affectionately call IVR hell, which is, press 1 for this, press 2 for this, and all you want to do is talk to a human. And I do think that is one of the sore spots of chatbots is when they don't know, hey, it's time to pass it on to a human. This is now beyond the scope of what you were built to do, and we need the human help. And if we can fix that, and I'm sure that is something that you guys do really well, then I think it does change the experience quite a bit because, as I said at the top, I'm conflicted. It's funny. My kids and I are watching the show now on Netflix. I think it used to be on the CW, called The 100. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, what happens is the AI goes bad and wants to take over the human race, right? And so we see this stuff on TV, and you start to wonder, hey, are the robots really coming, and are they going to take over? But tell me about let's dig a little bit deeper into kind of the AI versus human relationship, how you need both there to really have a successful CX.
Right. I mean, there's one big change companies need to do if, they're going to put some sort of AI in front of the customer, right? Which is kind of elevating the human experience when that happens, right? What you don't want is the human agent sounding like a bot. Right. So we always tell, customers that make sure that, you kind of go for a higher end agent, pay a little bit more. Right. And then, make them aware that now it's passed on to you. Now, they're expecting a highly elevated conversation. And that's really important to make the experience, quite seamless. Right. But the other, we talked about, it's not about the cost saving. It's not about removing the agent. Brands, if they lose, the touch with, the human connection that is created by human agents, if they have the time and the proper training, and the company has got a great customer service philosophy, that's the brand connection right there, right? So I don't think 100% automation and you never talk to someone, unless everything like from the supply chain to everything works like clockwork. In which case, you've got a great thing going and, customers really don't care to talk to you, that's fine. But in reality, things do break, things do, get screwed up. And it's that human connection and the empathy and the opportunity to fix it rapidly with ownership that creates that brand connection, right? So I do think a lot of thought has to go into understanding where are the breakpoints that customers reach out to you to asking for help, and where does human intervention come in quite handy, right? Always say if something has gone really bad, even though it could be automated, once in a while having a human agent actually take that conversation, whether it's chat, messaging, whether it's by phone, really reinforces it, right? It also opens up a point of time, which is you can now take that free time for the agent to just randomly call existing customers and say, how is it going? How's the experience going? Because a lot of the businesses today have moved into a subscription model effectively, right? And so if you're a subscription business, retention is really driven by the overall experience, and customer experience is a big part of it.
For sure. We are talking with PV Kannan. He is the founder and CEO of 247.ai. And PV, one of the things that you mentioned in the book that really caught my eye was the idea as a use case of AI helping agents to become better agents. And that's actually the reverse of what we were just talking about, of the kind of the handoff. It's about, hey, the AI may not even need to talk to the customer at all, but here are all the things it could do to help the agent do a better job. Can you talk a little bit about that use case?
I think one of the, AI has obviously got multiple application in the customer experience space, but one thing we discovered is, you obviously have, great agents in any organization, right? So by intent, we, figure out what is it that those agents do that makes those conversations shine and get really high CSAT and NPS scores, right? And then we realize if we can find that, secret sauce, why not share it with every agent, right? So, as the intent becomes clear to the AI, and let's say, the company has decided for that intent, let's give it to a human agent. Even if it's a brand new agent, the agent sees what the best agents have done before, right? And that, I think, first, gets the agents quickly up to speed. But secondly, they're starting to emulate more of the, better agents in the system than going through that learning curve, which can be, quite long and can be very frustrating for the customers who face them, right? So that's kind of the whole methodology around, how can AI help agents in one instance. The second instance is AI, going and finding all the data for the agents so that they don't have to make the customer wait, because you've already understood the intent. You need to know, like if I say, hey, I want to return this item, AI can go quickly pull up the policy and say, yes, you can return it or not, right? And so it frees up a lot of time for the agent, and it's all about speed, right? I mean, today we get impatient if Google takes 0.01 second to return a response, right? And so it's all about how do you get that customer to come in. If they want to spend more time talking to you, that's great. But most customers, would prefer that they get their time back. And AI can, really assist agents in multiple ways.
Yeah, and what I really like about it, I really think that the most innovative technologies help both sides of the equation. And an example there is, and I wrote about this in my first book, is that when Uber came out, they didn't just solve every problem for the riders. They also solved virtually every problem for the drivers. And I once sat with an Uber driver early days and was asking her about being a taxi driver. And she's like, well, this was a problem, this was a problem, this was a problem. And none of these are problems with Uber. And so you match those things up. And I think one of the things that AI can be so good at from the agent perspective is anyone that's been in a contact center has seen that most agents have to create their own shortcuts because whatever system is there isn't working for them. They're
Right.
copying and pasting scripts out of Word into the chat, or they have, my favorite is they have, 97 yellow sticky notes on their screens because they're reminding themselves of this and that. And it seems to me that that's one of the big benefits is that AI knows all that stuff, knows where all the FAQs are and the knowledge base. And, and so you don't have to have all these different programs open at the same time and these shortcuts that they've had to devise themselves. Is that right? Is that
right? I mean, for years, and you're right about the contact center. If you step inside, you know how difficult the job is, even though from outside you think, oh, that must be an easy job, right? But you're right about the multiple windows, the FAQs, and so on and so forth. And for years, company have been pursuing this ideal dream of this one pane for the agent, and they get everything they want, right? And I mean, lots of IT projects have failed just trying to build that, right? And the reason for that is you have to think about what is needed for by intent. And most of the projects started with the thing of what all can I stick in every part of the screen and make it so tiny that the agent cannot read it, right? So that's why those projects fail. And here what's happening is, like you rightly pointed out, if the intent is known to AI, it can start working in the background, trying to gather everything. And with the current technology, it just takes less than a second to pull it up for the agent. And for the agent, what the biggest benefit that the driver is, the quality of the conversation goes up because they're confident what they have in front of them is the right answer, right? In the past, they would be a little bit, especially if they're like with 1 or 2 months experience, they may not be 100% confident of feeling that this is the right thing to do for the customer, right? AI kind of steps in and kind of acts as the arbiter of that, and I think that's really improving the experience.
Yeah, I agree. I probably should have started here, but as you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that there's terminology that gets thrown out a lot in this area that I think, frankly, is based on a little bit of ignorance that pairs a lot of different phrases together. Now, I'm thinking specifically of AI and machine learning. Almost always people say those together. And then you add things like natural language processing to it. Can you give us just the kind of 2-minute primer on these different types of technologies, but most importantly, how do they all work together?
Right.
Because they're not the same thing. They're different.
They're different. So AI, think of it as a broad umbrella covering all kinds of technologies and techniques that artificial intelligence can be applied to. Machine learning is one such technique, right? Within machine learning, there are again multiple frameworks to look at different sets of problems, right? So recognizing pictures, you don't use the same algorithm that you would use to say, hey, recognize great conversations for me, right? So that's why people just randomly throw these things. NLP is one such technology under AI, right? And NLP is really, again, within NLP, you have multiple layers, which is, it could be applied just to understand what your intent is, right? Could also mean that, the system is so sophisticated, it understands the entire conversation. and can at any given point say this conversation is actually going great or it's not going great, right? Could also do things like, oh, at this step, I need to give this to the agent, right? But it's all about understanding what is it that the agent and the customer are communicating with each other, right? And in the instance where it's actually the bot that's doing the interaction, then it's really trying to understand what did the customer say for what I just provided to the customer, right? So, but it's also one of the most important aspect in NLP is setting thresholds where, if you say, you have to meet a very high threshold for me to be comfortable that automation should take the next step. Or you can say, you know what, I want to, focus on great experience. So, because the, model will always give the probability of what it is. So let's say I say, if something is 90% probably that's the case, then give it to the bot, let it do its job. Or I could say, if it's not 95% confident, I don't want to take a chance, right?
Right.
And so there are, there is so many subtlety to it. It's not just about building it and deploying it. It's really understanding how do consumers react to it? What do they think when they read something that the bot said, right? So, what we recommend to, anyone, it doesn't have to be, our customers, is go do user testing in a user lab, right? Bring your customers in, tell them the reason you're doing it, which is like, again, goes back to the primary point. It's not about eliminating the agent. It's really the 24/7 on-demand convenience you're providing. You mentioned Uber. It's one of my favorite examples, right? In the past, I mean, getting a taxi is like a nightmare in most suburbs in United States, right? And here comes this little thing where you just press a button and then 10 minutes later, your ride is there. And more importantly, you actually know where the driver is, because that's the other thing that always bugs us, right? Which is like, should I go wait outside or should I be sitting inside? So, the entire experience, like you pointed out, from both the rider perspective and the driver perspective was solved with a simple app, right? A similar approach is needed here, right? You need to, understand your client base, to understand what their aspirations are. Maybe they don't need 24/7 on-demand service, right? It really depends on the industry you're operating in. But if you've decided that's what you need to do, then definitely one step that's needed is get the end customer involved so that the design gets much, much better.
I cannot emphasize enough the importance of usability testing in everything that you do digitally. I mean, websites, mobile apps, AI, whatever it is, you got to make sure that it makes sense to the customer, because what makes sense in a conference room, or even worse, a virtual conference room, doesn't always make sense to your customer. So I think that was a great call out there. I'm curious about, where are we in terms of especially the natural language processing? Where are we at the end of 2020 in terms of understanding slang and humor, and perhaps my favorite, sarcasm, and really getting how humans talk, not just taking all of the words literally? Are we 90% of the way there? Are we 98% of the way? Where would you say we are?
I think we are far from getting anywhere close to that level of perfection, right? It's also very individual based. So if you're a sci-fi fan, your sense of humor is different from someone who's a sports fan and things like that, right? So it's a problem that's being done. One area where we've actually cracked it fully open is when we can detect irritation and you're generally unhappy with how it's going. Anything that displays anxiety, those things can be like very high degree of accuracy detecting it and then giving it to a more experienced agent rather than just routing it to the next available agent. So there are things that the technology has really improved. And we know with technology, right? I mean, if you compare the first iPhone to what we have, it goes leaps and bounds. So I'm quite confident in the next 3-4 years, this will improve. The other thing that we do see is the customer, the end consumer acceptance of this technology is very high. They do give it a fair shot before they give up and then try to get to an agent, because I think we've all become accustomed to wanting to do it ourselves, then actually dialing 800 number and waiting. So that plays well with all the evolution that will happen with the AI technology, because people are really keen to make this work.
For sure. I think the self-service boom is definitely helping this because more and more people, especially now we're all at home, and certainly for a while at the beginning of the pandemic, calling an 800 number was almost impossible. The waits were so long that there is a desire to self-serve. And I do think that is a huge use case for AI and chatbots. Something you said about recognizing irritation was really interesting to me. I'm just curious because I genuinely don't know. Is that all based on vocabulary, or can it also be based on like tone of voice and that sort of thing?
Right. It also, there's the tone of voice. It's about the words you use. It's also about, repetition. You repeat the same thing a couple of times. That means, you're not that happy when you repeat the same thing.
Yeah.
So those are all signals that tell us that, hey, this is not really going well. You just said, hey, I don't understand. And the next time the bot says something, you say, I don't understand. I mean, you're ready to break that consumer at that point, right? So a lot goes into that. It's also, the way, Dan, we do this is, fortunately with digital conversation, about a third of the conversation get rated by the customer about how they liked it, right? So you look at all the unhappy conversations and figure out, what are the common things that seem to be coming out of it, right? And that's how we figure out, hey, these things typically will make that customer unhappy. And then you decide what to do about it, right? So, the person said, I don't understand twice. Okay, then get an experienced agent right away to intervene and make the problem go away, right?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it makes it actionable. And if it's not actionable, then it doesn't really matter. And I think to your point, it's about not just solving the problem for the one customer, but making sure that you don't get more inquiries down the road and you actually solve it for all customers, which I think is awesome. We had the pleasure of having your voice on our podcast this week, The Experience This Show. Check it out on your favorite podcast app. And one of your voice recordings, I remember, started with the question of, what if you could call into customer service and they already knew what you wanted and basically could give you what you wanted before you even asked? I'm interested for you to dig a little bit deeper on proactive service and getting out in front of things, because I think that is really a fascinating potential aspect for CX.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about intents, they're also connected to events, right? So for instance, I placed an order and you told me that it's going to come tomorrow. And then, the next day after tomorrow, if I call you, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out you're going to talk something about the order and the fact it hasn't been delivered, right? So working backward with all the events, that's where machine learning can actually associate intents with, certain events, right? If that event happens, the customer is going to call about blah, right? And so what we always advocate is, it's a lot, a little bit more work gets, is involved in building it. But if you build a predictive model, you can actually say, hey, Dan, is this about the order you didn't receive? That's a better conversation opener than me having to call, identify myself, and then give you the order number, things like that. So, one of the design principles that I talk about in the book is make as much effort from the customer go away. Never ask a question that you know the answer to, right? Or you can figure it out with technology, right? Why are you asking dumb questions? Like, if I go to Apple support and Apple says, which product is it? That's a logical question. But if Apple says, what's the problem? Then, it's not a great design, right?
Sure.
So definitely, that's what I mean by, that proactive first step, which builds a lot of confidence. We always see if there is a predictive, question by the bot to begin the conversation, those conversations get NPS off the roof, right? Now, coming back to the other part of the question you asked, which is proactive. Proactive is making the problem go away, right? And I think that's the next step. I mean, I think companies are just evolving to even do predictive. Proactive is the next step. You already know that, you missed the delivery deadline. How do I reach out to you and say, hey, this is what's happening with your order. Don't worry about it, right? And I think companies are still, kind of in the path of that, evolution to get to that level of perfection.
That is the level of perfection. And, the example I always use there is there's so many of us that call our cable company once a year, right about around the end of the year. and we say, hey, you got any better deals for us? And the conversation always goes the same, right? Yep. Well, we have a package that gives you exactly what you have today, but it's $20 cheaper. And then you say, well, why am I not on that package? Why did you make me call to ask for that package? And I always imagine this case where the cable company calls me and says, hey, Dan, we just want to let you know, we put you on a new package because it gives you the same thing that you have for $20 less. Wow, like what a different experience that would be. And especially for an industry that often has some trouble keeping customers happy, it's such an amazing way to show them that you're looking out for them. Yep. And yeah, I understand. I get the economics behind it. You can't move all of your customers down $20 without losing significant money, but you can pick and choose which ones you do that to. And I think you'll find that it's a remarkable experience. And even the predictive, I'm thinking when I call my airline and they say, well, is this about the flight you're taking tomorrow? Why, yes, it is. Thanks for asking. And it almost takes you off your guard a little bit. And as a customer, you're a little more relaxed because you feel like, hey, they get me. And yep. That's a good feeling. And that's why it doesn't surprise me to hear you say that the NPS score, the conversation probably starts from a better place and therefore continues on from that better place when you use this predictive technology.
Right. And Dan, I assume you're talking about United Airlines since you're in Chicago.
Actually American, but yes, I've used both.
Because we implemented the predictive technology in United.
Oh, good.
Back, so,
Good. Yes, a great Chicago company.
Yes.
Well, hey, PV, as I like to say, this is the fastest half hour on the internet. So believe it or not, we've already been at it for 29 minutes. So that means I have to say goodbye to you, but I really appreciate you being on the show. I've learned a ton from you. Loved the book. Everybody, please go out and get it. The Age of Intent by PV Kannan. He is the founder and CEO of 247.ai. And just so that I get it right, because I know that that's the name of the company, how do we get to the website?
Okay, it's 247.ai.
247.ai. Excellent. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Happy holidays, happy New Year, and I am so glad to be connected with you. I'm sure we will speak again soon.
Great. Thanks, Dan.
And thank you to everybody who has tuned in 2020 for what started off as a little bit of an experiment. Hey, what if I could do a live show every week and interview interesting people? And 40 some odd episodes later, it's still going, and I'm thrilled about that. I do want to tell you we're going to take the next 2 weeks off and not have any episode the week of Christmas or New Year's. And we're going to be back January 7th with a really exciting thing that we haven't done before. There's a couple things changing. First of all, the time of the live episodes is going to change. We're going to move from the afternoons to the mornings in most part of the country. It's actually going to be noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, still on Thursdays. And on January 7th, I'm going to have Jill Raff on the show. Jill is a customer experience consultant. And what is cool about Jill is that she has a live show as well. And so we are doing what I think might be the first ever crossover episode of 2CX live shows. And so she's going to be on my show at 12 p.m. Eastern, and then I'm going to be on her show, which is called Celebrity Customer Experience, at 2 p.m. Eastern on the same day, January 7th. So I hope you will join us for both of those. Again, I'm Dan Gingiss, customer experience speaker and coach. Thank you so much for being with me. Happy holidays, happy new year. Please stay safe out there. 2021 has got to be better, and we're almost there. Thanks a lot. Take care.